What's up, my beautiful people? It's your boy Dixon. Today I want to react to ICE raids New York City food truck as migrant workers flee. Let's get to it.
Nationwide immigration and customs enforcement raids and the president's promise of mass deportation are setting some New Yorkers on edge. We're talking about street vendors here. They're not showing up. They're afraid of being rounded up. News Nation's Elise.
So, as ICE activity in New York heats up, many of the city's unlawful residents have stopped coming to work. And the fear of deportation is especially pervasive among those who work at food trucks. They're all alone, out on the streets, and now some are afraid they'll be quickly located and taken into custody. However, with ICE specifically looking for dangerous criminals, these raids probably won't shut down every food vendor in town, except for the ones who might have something to hide.
You can see some street vendors behind me, but if you go around the city, we're starting to see fewer and fewer of them as a result of these ICE raids that have happened here in the Big Apple and then more broadly in
What are the ICE raids doing? What is their function?
In a row, the NYPD has taken down illegal street vendors. Officers
Illegal street vendors.
Some of the goods are reportedly stolen.
So many of the people coming across will have a little card in their pocket or a number written down, which is a routing number for a bank account for the cartel. If you haven't paid all of your fees by the time you cross, they will collect.
If something happens to me, what will happen to my kids? Where will my kids go?
Concerned about ICE, she asked us to conceal her identity. She arrived in this country with her family, starting work as a street vendor to make ends meet.
And so when you're in a restaurant in New York and, you and your friends are talking about, oh, isn't it wonderful how these immigrants work, 2 jobs and they're so hardworking. Well, guess what? They're working 2 jobs a lot of the time because so much of their money is going back to those cartels who are still exploiting them.
So President Trump will soon order New York City's estimated 400,000 illegal residents to register with the federal government. But what nobody's talking about is that this, along with increased ICE activity, is going to reveal the true nature of New York City's shadow economy in a way we've never seen before. And although food trucks and street vendors feel especially at risk for being deported due to the highly visible nature of their work, with ICE raiding local businesses like fish markets, food bazaars, and gang-occupied apartments, the idea of living illegally yet normally in what is America's largest sanctuary city no longer looks as possible as it once did. And critics are adamant that with hundreds of thousands of workers illegally employed at businesses all over town, these ICE raids could completely tank New York City's economy.
They're legal
even law-abiding residents, their jobs, and
then they
hurting
should
neighborhoods. But proponents of these crackdowns say not only is ICE focused on dangerous people like gang members and criminals, any business
unless they're criminals.
employment laws and underpaying its workforce in the name of profit isn't making the city a better place. Instead, they're exploiting people to undercut their competitors while propping up our city's growing criminal underworld, which is fueled by the gangs and human traffickers bringing people here in the first place. On top of that, any job given to someone illegally eliminates a job that a law-abiding resident would probably take in today's unpredictable economy. And that brings us to the real reason why whenever ICE raids a business, whether it's a warehouse or a food truck or a grocery store or even a corporate office, they're doing every law-abiding person in that place a favor. Because there's no way a legitimate business can compete with one that hires people off the books and underpays them. Plus, secretly employing federal fugitives with criminal records puts their employees unknowingly in danger. Obviously, this is a disaster, but those aren't the only ways illegal businesses destroy communities all over the city. Because as you're about to see, there's a criminal underworld lurking just beneath the surface of what look like legitimate businesses, and it's not going anywhere as long as there's money to be made.
I get this. So, once these criminals have stolen things or goods from the shop, now they can't sell them in the street.
Vendors and these trucks, these are part of New York City. You've got some spots that have been on the streets for decades, making an honest living. And you can get pretty much everything at these places. Breakfast,
and they have the right documents to stay there.
Over rice. But apparently some of these businesses have been breaking the law in ways that don't make their communities or our city any safer, which explains why there are now reports of some of these food trucks vanishing.
Now, street vendors, as I noted and you noted, are particularly in a tougher position. Almost all of them are immigrants, up to 96%. And because of a strict city cap on permits, many do not have the proper vending license, which means if they're caught selling without a license, they can actually receive a criminal
So if you've got food
I
vendors
now
who
understand why
are
these guys are
considering
afraid.
not coming to work because they're afraid of ICE, that obviously means that there is something up with their immigration status.
Yeah,
But these
yeah.
might not just be people who
They
are
don't
in
have
the
the right
country
document. They don't have the
illegally.
license
They
to sell
also
the
might be
foods.
preparing food in an illegal, unsafe manner, which
Yeah,
might
yeah,
not
yeah.
sound like a big deal until you consider what could be hiding under the surface of what looks like a quick bite. For example, people were caught illegally operating restaurant kitchens. Apparently, the restaurant they were using was full of violations, it was unsanitary, and by selling this food all over town, they could be making people sick. But
Yeah,
legitimate
yeah,
looking meals that actually make people sick is only part of the problem. The problem is many people working illegally at these unsafe operations might not even be doing it because they want to. And to a normal person passing by, these might look like well-meaning folks who are just here to make an honest buck as best they can. But if their employer's underpaying them, they're being exploited, and they also might be in the crosshairs of the very gang members and criminals ICE has come
That
here to do something about.
Most Americans don't understand is that when they see this mass flow of people across the border, what they're looking at has been described to me as the largest form of modern slavery in the world. So many of the people coming across will have a little card in their pocket or a number written down, which is a routing number for a bank account for the cartel. If you haven't paid or
That is terrifying, and it's awful. And you know something? The defenders of illegal immigration and illegal employment never seem to bring up the fact that many of the people in these labor situations might be in a lot of trouble. Or they hear about some business employing laborers and they think to themselves they're doing a great thing. They're giving people hope and a future and a chance at the American dream, which they can't get anywhere else. And they look at this as if it's some sort of noble cause, but the truth is the exact opposite. Because many of the folks stuck in an illegal labor situation, they're there for a long time until they pay off massive debts to folks who wish to do them harm if they don't. And what that means is if ICE agents were to go to food trucks and raid them because they got a tip that high priority targets were operating them, running them, or trafficking people from these operations, they might actually be rescuing people who are in a modern form of indentured servitude. And
I think that is a good
yourself that
move
because New
because
York's a big city, people can
you
come here
you
and get away
can't
from
put
these
people's
criminals.
life at
Oftentimes,
risk by
these criminals are
selling.
waiting for them in the very shelters that have been set up for new arrivals, revealing that many of the folks who come here and that New Yorkers perceive to be fleeing persecution and poverty are actually prisoners from the moment they enter our city.
There have been raids in nearby Newark, New Jersey at a wholesaler of fish there. And then we saw most recently a raid at the Bronx Terminal Market. That's a well-known food market in that borough. ICE snatching up not only undocumented workers who were on its list for having committed a crime, but those who were not on its list for having, not committing a crime in this country. In some cases,
You can really hear that mainstream narrative that being in the country illegally isn't in and of itself a crime. But even if you do think that, funding criminal organizations and sending money overseas to criminals, that's definitely a crime. And that's what these gangs are forcing people to do. And some shady New York City business that's hiring people off the books, they're part of two criminal operations. The criminal operation benefiting cartels and gang members, and the criminal operation of a business that exploits its own workers. Because no place that's hiring people off the books does it because they're trying to make the world a better place. Oh no, instead they're just trying to get a leg up on their competitors and make more money. It's being done in the name of profit, but it is cloaked in fake progressive compassion for vulnerable people who are actively being exploited. And if you've got people in New York that are either operating an illegal business themselves or are renting out some food truck to try and use it without a permit somewhere, all the money that they make, the best case scenario is that they get to keep it and it goes into their pocket, even though they've just operated an illegal business that could be hurting people and is against the law. But at worst case, all of the money they make, it goes to somebody that's threatened them and says that they know their family back in whichever country they're from, and that is collateral to get them to pay up.
You and your friends are talking about, isn't it wonderful how these immigrants work, two jobs and they're so hardworking. Well, guess what?
Probably if someone threatens you that you know the family, you will do whatever he wants because you never know, he might harm one of the family members.
Wristbands which link to databases and
He
computers,
wants.
so the cartel is able to track.
Did you hear that? There's no escape because these cartels and gangs gang members, they're watching people from the moment they cross the border to the moment they come to a sanctuary city like New York.
Okay.
And because of the asylum crisis, there are more people here than ever who don't have legal permission to be in the country. And with these gang members embedding themselves in the very facilities that house these people, they're surrounded by potential victims. And what most Americans are completely in the dark about is that our border policies, they didn't just help these criminals. Oh no, the digital app-based process for asylum seekers entering the country was actually co-opted by criminals who used it to figure out which people to victimize first. And although the idea of app-based digital entry sounds modern and sounds efficient, it was forced upon people waiting in the middle of the desert without access to food, water, or let alone technology and an internet connection. And this article describes how people entering the country would have to subject themselves to cartels and gang members in order to get phones and get online and schedule border appointments. And if you rent a phone from somebody in order to use it to schedule appointments to get into America, they can track it. They can track your whereabouts and communicate with you and constantly threaten you. It's like a digital ball and chain, revealing that there's a criminal cost to illegal immigration most people are totally unaware of, which starts before someone even enters the country. But frighteningly, the fact that you have a massive sanctuary city apparatus in this country where hundreds of thousands of people can illegally try to make a living off the books, that situation is continuing to empower these criminal organizations even now that the border is closed.
New York City has a lot to do with the gang leaders.
So here's something that
Criminal
nobody's
activity.
asking. If people are forced to
Fight
cross the
them.
border and hand over all the money that they have
crazy.
to cartels, and then when they get to a place like New York, they've got to pay these people back, there's gang members watching them. How do they go about getting the initial merchandise that they sell on the street or sell at some street vending food operation? And how on earth do they earn the money to rent out one of these food trucks to begin with? That money's got to come from somewhere, and oftentimes that money is unfortunately obtained in a manner that nobody is going to enjoy learning about.
For the second day in a row, the NYPD has taken down illegal street vendors along Roosevelt Avenue in Jackson Heights, Queens. For officers,
Actually, they're illegal street vendors.
ranging from clothes, jewelry, and power tools. Some of the goods are reportedly stolen. Mayor Adams addressed the issue.
So if you've got a person and they've got a little booth on the side of the street and they're selling hats or scarves or even food, whatever they're selling might not have been legally obtained in the first place. And multiple news outlets have reported that in some areas of town, you've got people selling stuff that was stolen straight off the shelf from a place
Yeah,
like
so they
you've
have the license to sell whatever they're selling.
without permits selling things. You've got
I
people
see.
who are stealing things and
Yeah,
then
well, but-
illegally reselling them. And if you go to any grocery
Because
store in
if you
town,
don't
you'll
have
see
the license to
security
sell, it means
cameras.
they-
Sometimes you'll even see security
You know,
guards. You've got
where
food locked
the
up
question
because
is,
they can
where
be
did they
stolen,
get those
it can be
goods
cooked and it
that
can
they're
be
selling?
resold to, revealing that for many
Number
people,
one,
the path to
it's
becoming an illegal
most
street
likely that
vendor
they're
means
the
that
one
you've
who
got to
sold
do
them from
something
the
illegal
streets
after
or
you
from
come
the
into the
shops.
country without permission.
So
And
it's
what's
okay,
so
man.
shocking about this, there's a
I agree with the
Americans that think
race.
that when they see somebody who's here working illegally, oh, they're just trying to make an honest buck and chase the American dream. But there's nothing American about committing all the crime that we're hearing about, especially when people in many cases are forced to do it because they are in the clutches of some of the worst gang members and criminals on our entire planet.
What does Oro mean?
I think it's their names. They're
A bunch of them say
Yeah,
it.
they're all.
Oh, wow.
Ooh,
It's not like the ones in the valley where they were
man.
pre-text or pre-message.
It's a cartel smuggling tactic that has only been used in the Rio Grande Valley until now. These bracelets can mean several things. These bracelets can be proof of payment. They can be a coordinated effort of different groups, where they came from, who they are they a family member?
This is terrible, but it also reveals a strange symbiotic relationship between cartels and gang members and sanctuary cities. Both empower each other. The criminals couldn't make the money that they make without sanctuary cities existing because there'd be no place for tens of thousands of people to come and illegally work off debts that they owe to these criminals. And the people running and operating sanctuary cities think that the more people living in them illegally, the better. And to them, it gives them a purpose for existing because there's now a massive group of vulnerable people they can step in and protect from what they believe are immigration laws that do not have the best interest of humanity or America at heart. But because of these recent ICE crackdowns, there's a lot of fear among street vendors, apparently, who don't have licenses. And they're worried they could be deported because if they get caught breaking the law, now they're a criminal
It's
in America.
good because
and that's what ICE has said it's
they're the
going to be
criminals.
first. But instead of cooperating with ICE to turn over the gang members who are living in some of our asylum shelters, or the criminals who we constantly release from jail and won't turn over to federal custody when the government asks for them, our leaders have another plan that might just make this whole problem worse.
Street vendor reform package would expand access and protections for vendors in New York City, formalizing their stalls as small businesses and decreasing their risk of being detained or deported. Some Queens locals we spoke with condemn unlicensed vending as a public nuisance.
So the advocate crowd here wants the city to just issue more licenses, but now that we know that these licenses or these vending operations can be used by criminals, who do you think they're going to end up in the hands of? And what do you think's going to happen
the question.
if somebody
You cannot just give everybody the license.
Do you think that
They must prove that whatever they're going to do, they are not criminals.
Get rid of the problem of stolen goods being sold on the streets. It doesn't get rid of that problem at all. In fact, it's just going to make it harder to crack down on because now everyone's licensed. But there are also reports that in some parts of town, vendors are teaming up with each other against the authorities to warn each other and act as lookouts. That way, if officers show up to do their job and catch a potentially dangerous criminal, everyone's going to know about it, and the criminal will unfortunately now be harder to apprehend.
Chosen to still work. They're reportedly setting up messaging groups, support groups, if you will, to give each other a heads up of when they see ICE in their community, Marky.
Yeah, and also apparently befriending other, store.
Now, obviously, if people are here and they're here illegally, of course they're going to be worried about ICE agents showing up. But look at what this has created. It's created a situation that just protects criminals because ICE, they're not here to arrest people who are in the country illegally but are otherwise law-abiding. And the border czars made it abundantly clear that terror watch list suspects, gang members, and dangerous individuals are who they're really after. But now you've got people acting as lookouts for one another. But the big question is, what do you think about people who are here and are working illegally? Are they really chasing after the American dream, or instead are they working as hard as they can just to survive because gang members and criminals are on the other end of every single thing they're doing? Would these issues even exist in New York if it didn't allow rampant lawlessness to persist across its streets in the first place? Does that help criminals? And is it a bad thing? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.
I think the Rays are doing the great job. I will support them, whatever they're doing. They need to. All the street vendors who wants to sell anything, they need to have the license. Simple and clear. Otherwise, home. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video.